Great food doesn't just happen. It's the result of structure, planning, and leadership. As chefs, we start with an obsession for food, but true mastery means going beyond the plate and leading a team, optimizing process, and ensuring predictable execution. Now in this video, I'll take you through my step-by-step approach to laying out a culinary vision and bringing it to life in any environment, whether foreign or familiar, from concept to service. Every chef that I've come across is capable of coming up with a great concept for a dish. But I find myself compelled to ask, what separates an average experience from an exceptional one? What turns an idea into a fully realized menu item that plates smooth, is delivered from the kitchen with ease, that nourishes guests flawlessly and strengthens the team in the process? I find it's the ability to work beyond the food. See, executing at the highest level isn't about reacting in the moment, it's about building a system where everything is anticipated, structured, and executed with precision. That's what makes leadership scalable, kitchens efficient, and experiences exceptional. Today I'm going to break this down into 5 phases that I use every time that I need to bring a vision to life. Again, whether it's a familiar environment or in a new one. If you're ready to take your leadership and execution beyond the food, then let's connect. Schedule a call with me today using the link below, and let's build the systems that take your kitchen from good to exceptional. In our industry, success isn't just about cooking, it's about mastering the 8 domains of culinary structure. Vision and strategy, operational mastery, guest experience, team leadership, resilience, counterbalance, craftsmanship, and delegation and communication. These are the pillars that evolve great chefs into great leaders. If you want to refine your leadership, optimize your kitchen structure, and create a team that thrives with or without you on the line, I can help. Schedule a call now using the link below this video, and let's take the first step in transforming your operation through your leadership. So let's dive in. Phase 1, collaboration. This is all about understanding the boundaries and setting the foundation, because true execution starts long before the first ingredient is prepped. And in order to do that, we first need to communicate key ideas and details with the host site. I usually do this by phone call or through email in order to align with the space, the constraints of the environment, of the team, and the expectations that the guests are going to have. In that conversation, I work to define logistics, service style, and the flow of the event. Now, this is no different than going over a BEO with a team or working through an event and planning a service, right? We always need to consider our space, the constraints that we have, and the expectations of the people that we're serving in order to provide the best level of hospitality that we can. Once that's done, then I move next into discussing budget, working out fees and discussing deliverables and making sure that we have a clear understanding of guest count or potential guest count, because precision in planning requires as few surprises in the moment as possible. I often like to think in terms of the old ship analogy, right? Big ships turn slow. The further in advance we know the route, the easier it is to adjust our course in order to anticipate that. And for me, when I'm going into a new environment, I really want to make sure that there's as much of those pieces covered as possible, also because I'm in somebody else's environment. And that includes for product, for labor, for plating, for dishware, for service staff that's available. So that way I can make sure that I'm on top of the expectation and the execution. From there, we move into phase 2, the planning phase. This is what I like to consider as structuring the vision, because a vision without structure, in my world, is just a dream. A plan transforms it into something that becomes action, that literally becomes tangible and real. So in order to do that, we move into the next couple of steps that need to take place in this process, and that includes defining the vision and the menu. Now, I do this by sketching out what the dishes are going to look like, or if I've produced them in the past, pulling up a picture. Think in terms of how effective that is with an event staff, being able to pull up pictures of components and help people understand where it goes. I'm a very visual person, so to me, pictures help really express what's going on. And if you take, for example, this sketch, I like to make it a point to point out what components are, possibly talk about quantities and decide what those are in advance, again, to work out as many of those surprises. From there, it's much easier to have the conversation and understand how the experience is going to align with the dining room, the setting, the china, and the guests that are there. That helps me define that piece. Next, I need to build out my execution plan. And this is where I think back to my conversations with Chef Arnone and thinking things through all the way through plate up, all the way through the final course, and trying to, again, anticipate as many pieces as possible. The longer we are in the business, the easier it is to anticipate what's coming, but there's always a series of phases. There's always the pre-plan, there's always the mise en place phase, there's always an execution phase, a plate up phase, a visit the dining room phase, and then a post-event, right? Like, there's always these pieces, there's always these patterns and these very similar steps that take place. So I utilize that to develop my execution plan. That way I can identify what needs to happen when, and I can work on establishing who's going to be responsible for it. Based on the conversations from earlier, if I have a team available, I can assign those tasks. If there's a pastry chef, I can talk with the pastry chef and work out the dessert in advance, making the communication that much easier, giving them some time to plan in advance and not have to steer their ship on a dime. That way I can plan for efficiency in addition to creativity. That way I can plan for execution, not just creation. That rounds out phase 2, and then it allows us to move into what I like to think of as the development phase, or phase 3. And this helps me refine the details that I've covered up to this point. I'm always thinking in terms of iteration. I'm always thinking in terms of what I've developed, revisiting it and making sure that things are being refined in such a way that I'm going to execute them at a high level. Going beyond the food means thinking about the systems that are going to make it happen. Again, the patterns and the processes that work. So the next step is to refine the dishes, look at the ingredients, make sure that the flavors and the aesthetics are all in alignment with what's possible, what's the expectation of our guest and of our host's site, and what's possible with the team and how they're going to be able to execute it. What's feasible? Scalability requires feasibility, and it requires alignment with the vision. Once those things are all together, then it's much smoother being able to go in and do those things. And I find that when I'm not paying attention to those things, I set myself up for a very difficult, very challenging period of time. It's really important to work out in advance how much staff is available. Sometimes I have a phenomenal team to help me. Sometimes I have 1 or 2 phenomenal cooks. What's going to happen in those 2 environments changes, especially based on what I need to produce. Now, as I'm considering the dishes, as I'm looking at the team, I'm also gathering recipes and building as necessary. This is where having a really well-rounded out repertoire makes a world of difference. Because creating a great menu isn't just about being inspired for the first time. It's about finding inspiration, standardizing based on your greatest hits, the things that you do very, very well. If I know an establishment and I know they make great stock, then I'm okay with asking for stock. If I'm not sure, then I'm more than likely to send a stock recipe in advance in hopes that they'll be able to make it. Again, trying to communicate if that's going to be possible, and if it's not possible, then I make sure that I show up with enough time and make sure that I have the ingredients ordered to be able to execute the stock. Because again, that's what my cooking is built upon. That's what I need to execute, and that's part of the reason why you would have me come and do an event. I would assume it's probably the same for you. And again, this is how I go about making sure that I'm delivering to the highest level possible, whether I know the environment or I don't. And that brings me to the next phase, phase 4, which is execution. Pulling all of the information and all of this plan together and making it happen. Because no matter how great the vision is, the success is in the details. That's why those recipes work. To me, that helps me have confidence knowing that I'm going into an environment where I'll be able to execute and work that out. I also calculate my recipes in such a way that they're scaled as appropriately as humanly possible. So I'm not doing any scaling on the fly, or I'm not asking anybody to do that. That came from general operations work and understanding that it's probably best if I don't have my newer cooks scale recipes until I'm confident that they can scale recipes. So when I go into a new environment, I'm not assuming that anybody has any negative talents or any positive talents. I'm just making sure that I'm communicating the needs as clearly as humanly possible without any positive or negative connotation. So in order to execute, I make it a point to take all of the research that I've done, the recipes that I've gathered, and the work that I've put together, and I build my orders and I calculate my buffer as appropriate based on the number of guests that's coming. Because it's not about guessing, it's about precision and making sure that I'm ordering the correct quantity of food to execute the event as appropriately as possible. I know from experience that I'm not going to be asked to come back if I order a lot of food, spend a lot of money, and I don't utilize the product that's in-house. So that's something that's very important to me. So I break my orders down by person with a predetermined portion size. So I make it a point to go through and really try and dial in exactly what I'm going to be serving with an appropriate buffer. I can adjust if the party count changes, but I have to know what each person is going to have and what I'm going to need to produce in order to do that. The next step from there is to create a clear prep list for an efficient workflow, organizing that work so that I can make the difference between a smooth service and a disaster service, or trying to shoot from the hip while I'm going, right? Like I can create a good plan in advance because I've planned enough times. I've written enough prep lists and production sheets, so I know what it's going to take in order to execute this event. And I want to have that done well in advance so that way I can share that information. I want to, again, think through. So the next step is to plan the plate up and the final execution. Make sure that I know what those plates are going to look like. Try and mock them if I can. I'll definitely mock them on the site, but may mock up my plates in advance of doing the event. So that way I can think through the steps, I can think through the execution, how many hands I'm going to need for plate up, and that helps me go back and adjust the prep list as necessary, or even adjust a dish if required, because every movement needs to be intentional. Everything needs to be efficient. Everything needs to be repeatable. I'm trying to show up in a new environment and showcase skills that help people learn efficient processes that allows them to execute more consistently, more reliably. When I'm here, I'm talking to you, I obviously need to be able to deliver at a very high level, and I fully respect that. I like that pressure, but at the same time, I take that very seriously and very humbly. Here, very humbly speaking about what I do, what works, because I've worked with some incredible people, and I think we can deliver great meals in some really interesting circumstances. I want to make things efficient and repeatable. I want people to be able to take good practices away from our interactions. And then once all that's done and it's pulled together, I want to put together a nice clean packet, send over the packet with the sketches, with the prep list, with the recipes, with the production plan, and anything else that's needed, and then have a phone call with the host site to make sure that we're on the same page. Try and answer any questions that they may have and answer any questions that I may have so that we can work through, again, any of those surprises. To me, great execution happens when everyone is aligned. So at this point, I try and be at least a week ahead of an event. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. The more time, in my opinion, the better, right? So 3 to 4 weeks in advance is exceptional, 2 weeks at minimum. And then we move into that next step, which is when we need to get a little bit closer and we're packing for the event. Again, touching base with the site and making sure that I'm anticipating any challenges before they happen. If there's any items that they can't produce that I need to get produced in advance, I want to make sure that I have those packed with me. Any special equipment that I have, I want to make sure that I have that packed with me, and I want to be able to make sure that I'm going to be able to utilize the time as efficiently as humanly possible. Also having a conversation with the host site and making sure that if they can produce things in advance, that they can. Then we move into the final phase, phase 5, which is leadership. This is the leadership beyond the food. This is all of those things that come from building a team and making sure that we're leaving people better than when we found them, because that's one of my core philosophies. I want to make sure that all the people that I work with are better off when I leave them than when I found them. Now we're literally coming into the execution of the event, and it's no longer about the menu, it's about the team executing it, knowing full well that I'm not going to be able to do everything myself. So the first step actually takes place before I get in, and it's that previous communication with the recipes and the information that I've sent in advance. And now my goal is to build rapport with the team through communication and accessibility, making sure that I'm available to be able to help people. And then that carries into my time when I'm in the environment. Again, being able to be approachable, to be able to work together, to be able to communicate thoughts and the work that needs to get done. That way I can make sure that I'm communicating as much as possible and making sure that I'm testing, evaluating, and working with the team to help the team execute to their ability. That ability is tied to how well they understand our expectations, how well I've explained them, and how clearly I've laid out the path for them to be able to do that. And then finally, I'm going to work alongside the team and make sure that I'm teaching everybody something along the way. Because it's not just about expectation, it's about developing those people. So those are 13 steps broken up into 5 different phases. And to me, those are the key pieces for bringing a vision to life. Bringing a vision to life isn't just about great dishes. Like I said, it's about systems, it's about structure, and it's about leadership. The best chefs aren't just cooks. We're architects of execution, we're problem solvers, we're team builders. To me, that's what it means to go beyond the food. And so when we implement these processes, if you think about the work that you do and incorporate some of these pieces, whether it be for a new menu, a special event, or refining your operation, you're going to shift from working in your kitchen to working on the development of your team. And that makes up the difference between stress and smooth execution every single time. That's the structure that you build before the service even begins. From this, I'm hoping that you've taken away some really key points and found a couple things to incorporate into your process. If you'd like to learn more about how I support professional chefs like you in your leadership and execution beyond the food, then let's connect. Schedule a call with me today using the link below, and let's build the systems and define the processes that take your kitchen from good to exceptional. Thanks for spending your time with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.